At my daughter's wedding, I noticed something that didn't belong in a day that was supposed to be beautiful. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't involve shouting or accusations. It was small, painfully small, but sharp enough to cut straight through the joy I had tried so hard to feel. A look, a gesture, a whispered remark not meant for my ears. I kept walking, kept smiling, kept pretending everything was exactly as it should be. I just smiled and walked in. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Weddings always bring a certain kind of magic with them. Soft music curling through the air, flowers lining every aisle, the quiet murmur of guests greeting one another. That morning, as I adjusted the clasp of the necklace my late husband had given me on our 25th anniversary, I told myself this day would be about love, not loss. I was 68, and though life had worn its edges into me, I still believed in moments that could warm the heart. The ceremony was held at a historic hall just outside Charleston, with tall windows that poured golden light onto polished floors. My daughter, Megan, looked radiant in her gown, her smile almost too bright for my aging eyes. Seeing her walk down the aisle was like watching time fold in on itself. My little girl clutching her stuffed rabbit, the teenager slamming her bedroom door, the young woman leaving home with dreams bigger than her suitcase. All of it lived inside that moment, stitched into the lace of her dress. For a while, everything felt perfect. Guests were laughing, clinking their glasses, snapping photos near the staircase draped in white roses. I let myself breathe, let myself believe I was part of something warm and welcoming. I took my seat at the reception and folded my hands in my lap, trying not to think about how different events like this felt without my husband by my side. He would have stood tall and proud, probably crying more than I did. Then the shift happened, subtle but unmistakable. Megan's new husband, Ethan, leaned toward one of his cousins and whispered something. The cousin's eyes flickered in my direction, then widened, then quickly darted away as if caught staring at something they shouldn't. Ethan straightened his tie, scanned the room, and when his gaze landed on me, he smiled. Only it wasn't a warm smile. It was calculating, measuring, like someone assessing the value of something behind a storefront window. I had seen that smile before. Not on him. On lawyers, on investors, on men who spoke to my husband as if every word had a price tag. I brushed it off at first. Weddings make people tense. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was reading too much into a look on a day already heavy with emotion. But then came the second detail. This one even smaller, but it hit deeper. At the table placement board near the entrance, where every guest's name was written in elegant calligraphy, mine had a faint pencil mark beside it. A mark as though someone had erased something and rewritten it. I leaned in slightly. The original line was too smudged to read, but the space was cramped, squeezed, like my name had been added back in at the last minute. I stepped away before anyone noticed I was looking too closely. Through the afternoon, the details kept stacking themselves like quiet warnings. Ethan's mother avoided meeting my eyes. His uncle, whom I'd met only once before, made a comment about financial stability in marriage, and then awkwardly apologized, insisting he meant nothing by it. Ethan hovered near Megan, whispering in her ear more than newlyweds typically do, glancing toward me each time my attention drifted their way. And then, the moment that rooted itself in my bones. During the father-daughter dance, as Megan rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, he looked straight at me over her hair. He didn't smile this time. He didn't look away either. His expression was cool, expectant, like a man waiting for a deal to close. My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. I stayed exactly where I was, hands folded, chin lifted, refusing to let a stranger's ambition stain a day my daughter deserved to remember fondly. Still, something in me tightened, a sense I hadn't felt since before my husband passed, a sense of being appraised, measured, targeted, and all because of one truth I had kept to myself. No one at that wedding, not even Megan, knew that I had inherited over $30 million when my husband died. I hadn't told them. I hadn't told anyone. It wasn't something I wanted to color my relationships. It wasn't something I wanted to be defined by. But as I watched Ethan watching me, a cold understanding settled into my stomach. Maybe keeping that secret had protected me more than I realized. I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, and forced myself to smile into the warm glow of the ballroom. The day wasn't ruined yet. Not on my watch. Not if I could help it. The morning after the wedding, the house felt unusually still. Not peaceful, just quiet in a way that made every sound sharper. The ticking of the kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of the old hardwood floors as I moved from room to room, still in my robe, still replaying moments from the night before. I set a pot of coffee on the stove and watched the steam rise, curling in thin ribbons like thoughts I couldn't quite catch. The reception had ended late, but sleep never came. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles, hearing Ethan's voice echo in the back of my mind. Not words, just the tone he used whenever he glanced my way. The tone of someone who believed something belonged to him, he just hadn't reached for it yet. I sat down at the kitchen table with my mug, the porcelain warm against my palms. The space felt too big, too empty, without my husband crossing the floor to kiss the top of my head the way he always had. He'd been gone for 2 years, but grief had a strange way of resurfacing at the worst times, especially when life felt uncertain. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long stripes across the table, and for a moment I tried to convince myself I was overthinking everything. Weddings brought nerves. People said odd things. Maybe Ethan's strange looks were just the clumsy attempts of a man trying to impress his new family. Maybe the erased name on the seating chart meant nothing. Maybe, but the bag on the counter proved I wasn't imagining things. A small velvet pouch, the kind used for jewelry or keepsakes, sitting exactly where I hadn't left anything the night before. I reached for it slowly, my fingers brushing the soft fabric. Inside was a folded note. Megan said, "You would want to keep this safe." That was all. I unfolded the tissue paper and found nothing inside. No gift, no keepsake, just the emptiness of it, like a placeholder for something he assumed I should hand over to him later. I set it down carefully, unwilling to let a thin piece of paper ruin my morning. But the knot in my stomach tightened all the same. By noon, the phone began to ring. Relatives calling to congratulate Megan. Neighbors asking how the wedding went. I answered each one with practiced warmth, never mentioning the things that had unsettled me. I never wanted to cast a shadow on my daughter's first full day as a married woman. It wasn't until early afternoon that Megan called. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice bright but tired. "Are you resting today?" "I'm trying to," I answered, leaning back in my chair. "How are you feeling?" "Happy, exhausted, a little overwhelmed." She laughed softly. Ethan's side of the family can be a lot. I didn't respond right away. I could hear dishes clattering faintly in the background, maybe from their rental house. Then Megan added, "Ethan said he might stop by later, just to check on you." My grip tightened around the phone. "To check on me?" I asked. "Yeah, he said he wanted to make sure everything went smoothly last night. He worries sometimes. You know how he is." I didn't know him. Not well enough to understand why a newlywed man would want to check on his wife's mother the morning after the wedding. But Megan sounded so genuinely happy that I swallowed my questions. "I'll be home," I said. We hung up, and I rested my phone on the table, pressing my fingertips against my forehead. I wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But something about the timing felt off. Too fast. Too intentional. If Ethan had questions, why not ask at the wedding? Why not through Megan? Why come alone? The day dragged on with slow, heavy hours. I watered the plants. I folded laundry. I reorganized the pantry, though it didn't need reorganizing. Anything to keep my hands busy while my mind circled the same uneasy thoughts. Near 5 p.m., I heard a car door outside. I looked through the window and saw Ethan walking up the driveway, holding an envelope under his arm. His pace was steady, confident, as though he already knew I'd open the door. He didn't ring the bell. He knocked. 3 firm knocks that echoed through the hallway. I stood still for a moment, letting the silence stretch, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Then I opened the door. "Mrs. Hart," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "What do you need, Ethan?" I asked softly, stepping aside just enough to keep the doorway polite but not inviting. He lifted the envelope slightly. "Just something small I wanted to discuss with you. Some paperwork." My heart sank a little. So it wasn't just looks at the wedding. It wasn't imagined. It wasn't nerves. but my face didn't show any of that. I'd learned long ago how to keep my expression calm. "Come in," I said. He walked inside as if he already knew the layout of my home. I closed the door behind him, feeling the air shift, the house absorbing the presence of someone who shouldn't have been there. Not so soon, not with an envelope. He sat at the dining table without being asked. I remained standing. "It's just a simple form," he began, sliding the envelope toward me. "A matter of family planning, financial clarity, nothing complicated." Financial clarity. The phrase sat in the air like a weight. I didn't touch the envelope. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Does this matter to you? On the first day of your marriage?" Ethan folded his hands and looked up at me, eyes steady. "Because," he said, "I believe honesty is important." He paused. "And I want to make sure we're all starting on the same page about what was left to you after your husband passed." The clock ticked once in the silence that followed. Outside, a bird chirped. Inside, something colder settled into my chest. I didn't sit down. I kept one hand resting lightly on the back of the dining chair, as if the wood itself could anchor me while Ethan waited for my reaction. The envelope between us looked harmless, thin, beige, barely creased, but I knew better than to trust the weight of appearances. Sometimes the lightest things carried the heaviest intentions. "I'm not sure what you think was left to me," I finally said, keeping my voice level. Ethan smiled, and something about the way he did it made the room feel colder. Megan mentioned her father did well for himself. Investments, real estate, a few accounts here and there. I just want to make sure everything is managed responsibly. "I see," I replied. That was a lie. I saw more than he realized. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, posture casual in a way that didn't match the sharpness in his tone. "It's normal, consolidating family assets, making sure there are no surprises." He tapped the envelope lightly. "This just establishes transparency, so we're all aligned." Aligned. A polite word for hand it over. I had heard variations of those sentences before. Back when my husband was alive and businessmen tried to flatter or corner him into deals they barely understood, he always saw right through them. He used to joke that you could read a man's intentions by how quickly he reached for a pen. Ethan's hand hovered near his. "You can look it over if you want," he added, sliding the envelope another inch toward me. I still didn't touch it. "Where's Megan?" I asked. "At the rental house," he answered. "I told her I'd only be a few minutes." Of course he had. I moved around the table slowly, not sitting, just shifting my vantage point. Through the window, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the lawn. The house was quiet, too quiet, and every tick of the clock behind me sounded like it was marking down the seconds until something irreversible happened. "What exactly did you tell this notary you brought yesterday?" I asked. He blinked, just once. A tiny, almost invisible pause. "Nothing," he replied easily. "He was there for someone else. I only got the idea afterward, talking with my uncle. He's the one who said it's best to get ahead of these things." Ahead of what? The thought came quietly, almost like a whisper inside my own chest. Ethan kept talking. "You know how family matters can get complicated. We just want to make sure everyone is on the same side. Since Megan is your only child, it's reasonable to assume," I cut in gently, "that she's entitled to everything I own." He froze for a fraction of a second, then softened his voice. "That she's protected. Protected." Another soft word with a hard center. I let silence fill the space between us. It stretched long enough that he finally added, "We're family now. There shouldn't be secrets." Secrets. If only he knew how tightly I was holding mine. "My husband handled our finances very carefully," I said. "He didn't like mixing personal assets with anyone else's. He believed it caused more trouble than it solved." Ethan gave a small laugh, the practiced kind. "With respect, times are different now." "No," I said. "People are the same." Another moment of stillness passed before he shifted in his seat, impatience flickering behind his polite expression. "Mrs. Hart, I just want to understand what you're working with. Megan and I want to build a future, a home, a family. These things require planning." "And you think my finances are part of your planning?" I asked calmly. He didn't look away. "They could be. They should be. It's not unreasonable." I studied him quietly, his neatly pressed shirt, his wedding band still looking new under the fading light. His confidence, no, entitlement, like a coat he had worn so long it felt natural to him. My late husband had once told me something I never forgot. Money doesn't change people. It shows you who they already were. I appreciate your concern, I said, finally pulling the envelope toward me with 2 fingers. Not opening it, just holding it. But whatever I inherited after my husband passed is my responsibility, not yours. His jaw tightened just slightly. A crack in the mask. Megan deserves stability, he said. She always has it, I replied. He opened his mouth to speak again, but I raised a hand, gentle, but final. This conversation is over, Ethan. Go enjoy your first days of marriage. Don't spend them worrying about an old woman's financial affairs. That stung him. I saw it. He masked it quickly, but not completely. He stood slowly, pushing the chair back with a soft scrape. I was trying to do the right thing, he said, straightening his jacket, for our family. Our family, I repeated quietly, as though tasting the words. We'll see. He hesitated at the doorway, as though expecting me to stop him, apologize, or hand over the envelope. I did none of those things. Tell Megan I said hello, I said. He nodded once, clipped and stiff, then walked out to his car. I didn't move until the sound of his engine faded down the street. Then, and only then, I opened the envelope. There was a single document inside, and as my eyes scanned the first line, I understood why he had come alone, and why he wanted my signature before anyone else knew a thing. The document was short, barely a page, but every line grew heavier as I read. It wasn't a will, not exactly. It was a mutual financial agreement, worded in a way that sounded harmless if you didn't look too closely. A few sentences about shared responsibility, a few lines about transparency, and then the part that revealed everything, a voluntary transfer of temporary management rights to ensure stability for the next generation. He hadn't even tried to hide it behind complicated legal phrases. He wanted control, direct control, over every account, every property, every investment my husband had left behind, and the signature line, my name typed neatly beneath it, waited like an open mouth ready to swallow whatever security I still had. I set the paper down and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of my nose. The late afternoon light was fading now, the gold giving way to gray. I could hear a car passing somewhere down the street, and the refrigerator hummed louder than usual, like the house was trying to remind me I still had time to breathe. My husband would have seen this coming. He always had an instinct for people. He used to tell me, the ones who smile the fastest are the ones who reach for the most. I hadn't wanted to believe that applied to someone who had just married our daughter. But the evidence was sitting on my table, printed in black and white. I folded the document and slipped it back into the envelope just as my phone buzzed beside me. Megan's name lit up the screen. Hi, sweetheart, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom, Ethan said he stopped by. Everything okay? I looked at the envelope. We talked. About what? She asked. Nothing you need to worry about on your first weekend as a married woman, I answered, keeping it gentle. She hesitated. I could hear her shift, maybe pacing a little. She always paced when she was conflicted. He said he wanted to make sure you weren't overwhelmed yesterday. He's trying, you know? I swallowed quietly. I know. He really wants you to like him, she added, softer now. He feels like you've been a little distant. Distant. If only she knew. Megan, I said, choosing my words carefully, marriage is new for both of you. People reveal themselves slowly. Give it time. She exhaled like she took comfort in that. Okay, we're having dinner with his parents tonight. I'll call you tomorrow? I'll be here, I said. After we hung up, I sat alone for a long time, the envelope a quiet presence at my elbow. I didn't want her tangled in this, not yet. Not when she was still floating on the soft edges of newlywed happiness. I wouldn't let him pierce that bubble through me. As evening settled, I made myself a simple dinner, grilled chicken and a small salad, but my appetite barely touched it. I kept replaying every gesture Ethan had made during the wedding, every whispered conversation, every glance in my direction. The picture was forming whether I wanted to see it or not. By the time I washed the dishes and wiped down the counter, the sky outside had turned a deep, calm blue. I turned off the kitchen light and stepped into the living room, only to freeze. There, on the floor beside the mailbox slot, was another envelope, cream-colored, unmarked. I picked it up slowly, almost afraid of what might be inside. My hands didn't tremble, but something inside me did, a quiet ripple of dread. When I opened it, a set of photocopied documents slid out. Property records, account summaries, notes written in careful handwriting, Ethan's handwriting, information about me, about my life, about every asset tied to my name up to 10 years ago. He had researched everything. I sat down on the sofa, the papers spread across my lap. A part of me felt exposed in a way I hadn't felt since my husband died, like someone had walked through my memories without permission, opening drawers, peering into places not meant for strangers. And yet, none of it showed the truth. None of it showed the $33 million I had never registered in my own name. For the first time that day, I let out a slow, steady breath. He didn't know. Not everything. Not yet. Still, the fact he had gone this far rattled me more than I wanted to admit. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and locked it inside my desk drawer. Then I turned off the living room lights and made my way upstairs, each step feeling heavier than it should have. As I reached the top, I paused. The hallway was quiet, the air calm, the house standing watch the way it always had. My husband's framed photograph on the side table seemed to look back at me, his eyes kind, steady. "I'm handling it," I whispered. My voice barely filled the space, but somehow it felt enough. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'd decide what to do next. But tonight, I simply needed to rest before the next move revealed itself, because men like Ethan didn't knock once and walk away. They always came back. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. The house was dim and cool, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something. I moved through my routine slowly, opening the blinds, starting the coffee maker, stacking yesterday's mail on the counter. But my mind wasn't on any of it. It drifted again and again to the envelope locked in my desk drawer and the documents Ethan had collected about me. By the time the sun had fully risen, I knew I needed fresh air. I slipped on my jacket and stepped onto the porch. The wooden boards creaked under my feet, and the crisp morning breeze curled around my neck. For a moment, I simply stood there, watching the neighborhood wake up. That was when I saw her, my sister-in-law Diane, walking up the sidewalk with a small grocery bag in hand. She'd been my husband's closest sibling, and even after his passing, she stayed connected in quiet, thoughtful ways. A bag of lemons when my voice went hoarse. Homemade soup during the winter. Always something small but meaningful. Her face softened when she spotted me. "Morning," she called out. "Morning," I replied, stepping aside as she climbed the steps. "I brought you some oranges," she said, lifting the bag. "The good kind, the ones you like from that little funnel farm stand off Highway 17. I smiled despite myself. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said, brushing it off. "But I wanted to see you. I heard the wedding went beautifully." "It did," I answered, choosing my words carefully. She studied me then, head tilted slightly, that perceptive look only someone who'd known me for decades could give. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep well," I admitted. She didn't press. She just followed me inside, set the bag on the counter, and started rinsing the oranges as though she'd lived here all her life. I leaned against the table, trying to steady my thoughts. After a moment, she asked, "Does this have to do with Megan's new husband?" My stomach tightened. "What makes you say that?" Diane dried her hands slowly. "Because I saw him at the country clerk's office 2 days before the wedding. He wasn't filing anything for the ceremony. He was asking about legal transfers, estate matters." I felt something in me still, like the air had paused. "He didn't see me," she added. "But I saw him. The way he talked, like he already owned whatever he was asking about." I pulled out a chair and sat down. The kitchen felt smaller now, the walls a little closer. "He came by yesterday," I said quietly, "with paperwork." Her eyes flashed with the kind of concern that didn't need words. "What kind of paperwork?" she asked. "The kind people bring when they want control over something that isn't theirs." She lowered herself into the chair across from me, folding her hands. "He doesn't know about the real inheritance?" "No," I said. "But he knows enough to be dangerous." Diane let out a long breath. "Your husband worried about this kind of thing. He told me once, when he was updating his trust, that he hoped Megan would marry someone with a good heart. Someone who wouldn't look at you like a bank account." I stared at the steam rising from my mug. "Maybe she doesn't see it yet." "She won't," Diane said softly, "not while she's still glowing from the wedding." We sat in silence for a moment. The refrigerator hummed again. A car door shut somewhere outside. Everyday sounds, but each one felt sharper now. "There's something else," I said. "Someone slid another envelope through my mail slot last night." Diane's eyebrows drew together. "From him?" "Information he's gathered. Property records, old accounts, details no one should have unless they went digging." She leaned back, her voice steady but low. "That boy's not just ambitious. He's planning. Planning, yes." The word fit too well. I rose from the table, reaching for the drawer where I'd locked everything away. I didn't take it out, just rested my hand on the handle. I have to decide how to handle this. Diane stood too, placing a gentle hand on my arm. "You're not alone," she said, "and you don't have to react today. Think first." He's already thinking. It was strange how comforting her presence felt. She wasn't the kind to exaggerate or dramatize. If she thought something was wrong, it meant something truly was. Before she left, she touched my shoulder again. "Call me if he tries anything else, day or night." After she walked down the path and disappeared around the corner, the house felt quieter than before, but not in the same heavy way. There was a steadiness beneath the silence now, like someone else had joined the weight of my worry. I sat back down at the table, letting my fingers trace the grain of the wood. Diane was right. I didn't need to do anything drastic today. But I did need to understand just how far Ethan was willing to go. Because men like him didn't research someone for no reason. They didn't gather documents just out of curiosity. They were looking for leverage. And the only question now was how soon he would try to use it. The rest of the day passed in slow, measured pieces, each hour pressing quietly against the next. I tried to keep myself occupied, folding towels, sweeping the porch, watering the plants along the window, but everything felt like a thin distraction stretched over something heavier underneath. Every time a car slowed near the house, I felt my shoulders tense. Every time the phone buzzed, my breath caught before I even looked at the screen. By early afternoon, I finally sat down on the living room couch, letting the quiet settle around me. The envelope in the desk drawer felt like it radiated through the walls, a reminder that I wasn't imagining any of this. That Ethan wasn't simply overeager, that his intentions weren't harmless. I had just begun to close my eyes when a soft knock came at the door. Not loud, not urgent, just a tap, 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 almost polite. I straightened slowly, smoothing my shirt before walking down the hallway. Through the frosted glass, I saw a figure, thin, hunched slightly forward, holding something in their hands. Not Ethan, not Megan. As I opened the door, I felt a small wave of relief wash over me. It was Mrs. Howard from next door. She lived alone now, a widow like me, and she often brought over small gifts from her garden. Today she held a container of muffins wrapped in a towel, still warm from her oven. "I was baking," she said with a smile, "and I thought you might like some." I stepped aside, letting her enter. "Thank you. That's very kind." She moved slowly toward the kitchen, placing the container on the counter. Then she looked at me more closely. "You've got that look," she said gently, "the kind women get when something is sitting heavy on their hearts." I laughed softly under my breath. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those who've carried the same weight." We sat at the table together. The sunlight through the window made her gray hair shimmer like threads of silver. She clasped her hands in front of her, waiting patiently, not prying, just offering space. "I'm dealing with something," I admitted, "something unexpected." "Family?" she asked, though she already seemed to know the answer. I nodded. "My daughter's new husband." She didn't react with surprise. Instead, she let out a quiet sigh. "I saw him here yesterday. He was parked in your driveway for quite some time." I looked up, startled. "You saw that?" She nodded. "I was trimming the hedges. He was on the phone. He didn't sound gentle." A small chill passed through me. "Did you hear anything he said?" "Not much," she said. "Just a few words. Documents, her signature, and something about timing." Timing, of course. I folded my hands, steadying my breath. He wants access to things that aren't his. She pursed her lips, thinking. Men like that never come alone. They come with plans and pressure and a smile that hides both. Her words reminded me so much of my husband that it hurt. He used to say things just like that, reading people with a sharpness I always admired. Mrs. Howard reached across the table and touched my hand lightly. "Don't let him corner you. You still have more power than you think." I nodded slowly, feeling a quiet strength return to me, not bold or fiery, but steady, the kind of strength that grows in silence. After she left, the house didn't feel quite as empty. Her visit settled me in a way I didn't realize I needed. Still, the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched longer, and the hours ticked by with a sense of quiet anticipation, as if the house itself understood a shift was coming. It was almost 6 p.m. when the phone rang. Megan. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice sounding a little off. Tired or distracted? I couldn't tell. "We just got back from dinner with Ethan's parents." "How was it?" I asked. "It was fine," she said, but her tone told me it wasn't. "They asked a lot of questions. About you." A small knot tightened in my stomach. "What kind of questions?" "Your living situation. Your future plans. Whether you've considered downsizing." She paused. "And whether Dad left anything complicated behind." Complicated. That word again. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. It felt like they expected something. I closed my eyes briefly, steadying myself. "You don't have to explain me to anyone." "I know," she said softly. "But Mom, why would they even ask those things? Why would they care?" "Because your husband told them to." I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I asked, "Did Ethan say anything after?" She hesitated. "He said it's normal for families to merge finances after marriage. That transparency is important. He said we need to know where everyone stands." I took a slow breath, keeping my voice gentle. "And how do you feel about that?" "I don't know," she admitted. "It all feels so fast." "Fast? Yes, too fast." "I'm coming by tomorrow," she added. "I want to see you." I didn't argue. I didn't warn. I didn't plant fear. "Of course," I said. "I'll be here." After we hung up, I stood in the darkening living room and let the quiet settle again. The day had given me enough pieces, small ones, scattered ones, but together they painted a clear picture. Ethan wasn't acting alone. He wasn't improvising. He wasn't nervous or clumsy or overwhelmed. He was executing something planned. And tomorrow, when my daughter came back into this house, I would have to decide exactly how much of the truth she was ready to hear. Megan arrived the next morning just after 10. I heard her car door close, then the hurried steps of someone carrying more emotion than they wanted to admit. When I opened the door, she was standing there with her arms wrapped around herself, as if the cool air was sharper than usual. "Hi, Mom," she said, forcing a smile. "Come in," I told her softly. She stepped inside, and I could see the exhaustion in her shoulders, the way her gaze drifted around the living room before settling on me. She looked like she had slept with questions instead of dreams. I brewed fresh coffee while she sat at the kitchen table, tracing the rim of her cup with her fingertip. When I finally sat down across from her, she exhaled long and slow. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." She hesitated. Do you feel uncomfortable around Ethan?" The question hung in the air like dust floating in a sunbeam, quiet but unmistakable. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched her carefully. Her eyes were troubled, but she wasn't defensive. She wasn't accusing me. She was searching for something true enough to steady her. "What makes you ask?" I said. She swallowed. "Last night at dinner, Ethan kept bringing up your finances. Not directly, just little comments. His parents chimed in too. It was like they were talking around something instead of saying it outright." I folded my hands. "And how did that make you feel?" "Uneasy," she whispered, "like they expect something from you. From us." I let the silence settle before asking, "Has Ethan talked to you about my accounts?" "Not really," she said. "Just hints, questions that don't feel like questions." She looked up and her voice cracked slightly. "Mom, did Dad leave something big behind? Something that makes people act like this?" I took a slow breath. She wasn't ready for the whole truth. Not yet, but she deserved something to hold on to. "Your father took care of us," I said, "but that doesn't give anyone else the right to start making plans." She nodded, relief barely touching the edges of her expression. She stared at the table again. "Ethan's been different. Not in mean ways, just secretive. He's on his laptop late at night with earphones in. He takes calls outside, and yesterday he kept checking his watch at dinner like he was waiting for something." My stomach tightened again. "Waiting for what? For who?" "He's under stress," I offered gently. "But why?" she asked. "We just got married. We have nothing to stress about yet. Unless—" Her voice tapered off. "Unless what?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't know." A bird chirped outside. The refrigerator clicked. The house seemed to pause with us. Finally, she took something from her purse and slid it across the table. An envelope. My breath caught. Someone left this at our rental house, she said. On the porch. No name, no note, just this. I opened it slowly. Inside was a printed page, no letterhead, no signature, just a list of property addresses and approximate values. My properties. My name at the top. My estimated net worth at the bottom, minus the inheritance Ethan didn't know existed. Every number matched the research he had gathered. But this was typed cleanly, organized, precise. Someone else had compiled it. Do you recognize it? Megan asked. I folded the paper carefully. It's information Ethan collected. Her eyes widened. But why would someone leave it at our place? I didn't answer. Because he wasn't working alone. Because someone was helping him. Because someone wanted Megan to start asking the very questions she was finally asking today. I slid the paper back into the envelope and handed it to her. Megan, I said gently, marriage reveals people slowly, sometimes painfully, sometimes beautifully. You're learning who he is in real time. That's not your fault. She blinked quickly, fighting tears. I just don't want to believe he'd use me, or you. I reached across the table and held her hand. You don't have to come to any conclusions today. She squeezed my fingers. Mom, can I stay here a while, just to think? Yes, I said, as long as you need. For the next hour, she sat on the couch, screw her phone, lost in thought. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, feeling the kind of ache only a mother understands, wanting to protect her while knowing she had to walk part of this path alone. Around noon, her phone lit up on the coffee table. Ethan, a text. I'm heading over. We need to talk. Her face paled. Did you tell him you were here? I asked. She shook her head. No. The knot in my stomach tightened again. He was coming anyway. Not calling first, not asking permission, not checking if it was a good time. He was simply coming. I moved to the front window, looking out toward the street. The neighborhood was quiet, but attention hung in the air like static before a storm. Megan stepped beside me. Mom, what do we do? I rested a hand on her arm. We let him talk, I said softly, and we listen. But deep inside, I felt something shift. Something calm and cold and steady. Because once Ethan walked through that door, I'd finally see what he was really after, and whether he was willing to show that truth in front of my daughter. Ethan arrived faster than either of us expected. We heard the car pull up, the engine cut, and then the quick, decisive thud of his door closing. Megan stiffened beside me, her fingers curling around the edge of the curtain. I placed a hand on her shoulder, not to calm her, but to steady both of us. A moment later, the knock came. 3 firm strikes, just like the last time. I walked to the door at an even pace and opened it before he could knock again. Ethan stood on the porch wearing the same polite mask he always wore, pressed shirt, stiff smile, eyes scanning everything behind me before he even said hello. Mrs. Hart, he said. Megan. His tone was too controlled, too prepared. Megan stepped forward, her arms crossed. Why are you here? Ethan blinked, hiding his surprise poorly. I texted you. We need to talk. I didn't answer. Her voice was firmer than I'd expected. He shifted his weight. It's important. Then say it. She told him. Right here. He looked past her and at me as if waiting for permission to enter. I didn't offer it. After a few seconds, he swallowed hard and stepped inside on his own, pretending it was natural, as if crossing someone's threshold didn't require trust. He walked straight to the dining table and placed a folder down. Another folder. My stomach tightened. Megan frowned. What is that? Something we should all look at. He opened it, spreading documents across the table as if he owned the surface they rested on. I think there's been some confusion about what's fair, and I want us to be on the same page. The words felt wrong. Too smooth, too rehearsed. Fair? I repeated quietly. Yes, he said, looking right at me. For the family. Megan stepped between us. Ethan, what are you doing? We just got married. Why are you so focused on my mother's finances? His jaw flexed. Because they affect our future, Megan. No, she snapped. They don't. For the first time, I watched Ethan's expression crack. Not fully, but enough. A tightening around the eyes, a twitch at the corner of his mouth. I've been trying to handle things responsibly, he said, lowering his voice like he wanted to sound reasonable. I've done research. I've asked questions. Yes, I cut in softly. You have. He looked at me sharply. I moved closer to the table but didn't sit. One by one, I skimmed the pages he had spread out, Asset listings, property assessments, old account references, all things he'd already shown his interest in. Nothing new, except one document in the center, a draft of a family estate integration plan, and at the bottom, 2 signature lines, one for Ethan, one for me. I didn't touch it, but Megan did. Her hand trembled slightly as she lifted the page. "You want my mother to sign this?" she whispered. "It's just structure," Ethan insisted. "Protection. My parents agreed it's the smart thing. My mother doesn't need protection from me," she said, eyes narrowing. "Or from you." Ethan exhaled sharply, frustration breaking through. "This isn't personal." "Yes," I said gently, "it is." He turned toward me again. "I'm trying to plan our life, our future children, our home. All of that requires stability, and if your assets aren't secure—" "My assets," I repeated, "not yours." He hesitated, then tried a different angle. "Look, things move fast after a wedding. Families blend, roles shift, everyone has responsibilities." "And what exactly," I asked, "do you think my responsibility should be?" His silence said everything. He wanted access. He wanted control. He wanted certainty about what he believed he was marrying into. Finally, he let the polite mask slip just enough to reveal the core of it. "You have resources, and we need them." Megan let out a breath like she'd been punched. "We or you?" Ethan stepped toward her, lowering his voice. "I'm trying to make sure we're secure, that we build something, that nothing is left uncertain." "Why is our future depending on my mother's money?" she asked, voice breaking. "Why are you even thinking about this right now?" "Because," he snapped, "it matters." The room stilled. He realized he'd raised his voice at her. He straightened again, forcing calm. "Megan, I didn't mean—" But she held up a hand. "Stop." He did. She looked at the documents again, then at him. "Did you go through our porch last night? Did you leave those papers?" His eyes flickered just for a second, but it was enough. "Megan?" "Did you?" she demanded. He didn't answer. Silence filled the room like water rushing in. I stepped forward, not aggressive, just steady. "Ethan," I said, "there is something you need to understand. My finances are not your concern, neither now nor later. They are not your leverage. They are not your plan, and they will never, under any circumstance, belong to you." He swallowed, jaw tightening. "And if your marriage depends on access to what's mine," I added quietly, "then the problem isn't in this house." Megan's breath hitched, and I saw realization settle into her eyes like a slow, painful dawn. Ethan looked between us, calculating, searching for footing, scrambling for a piece of the argument he could still control. But there wasn't one. He reached for the folder. I placed my hand on it first. "No," he froze. Then, almost reluctantly, he let go. Megan stepped back from him, her expression no longer confused or hesitant. Just clear. Terribly, painfully clear. Ethan stood there for a long moment, as if waiting for a line he could cross back over, but none appeared. Eventually, he straightened his jacket and walked toward the door without another word. When it closed behind him, the house exhaled with us. Megan sank into the nearest chair, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered, "but I see it now." I moved beside her, resting a hand on her back. Outside, Ethan's engine started, and for the first time, he didn't look back at the house as he drove away. Megan stayed at my house the rest of the afternoon, drifting between long silences and short, shaky breaths. I didn't rush her. I didn't push her to talk. I just let her sit with the truth that had finally revealed itself. That kind of realization doesn't land all at once. It settles slowly, the way dust settles after furniture is moved. Quiet, unavoidable, impossible to ignore. We ate a small dinner together, soup and crackers, though neither of us had much appetite. As the sky dimmed into evening, she moved to the living room couch and pulled a blanket over her lap. I sat in my armchair across from her, knitting needles resting in my hands, though I didn't get much stitching done. Every few minutes, she looked toward the window, as if expecting headlights to reappear in the driveway. They never did. It was almost 8 when her phone lit up again. Ethan. This time, he wasn't texting. He was calling. She let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again and again. Megan stared at the screen like the name itself was draining her. "Answer if you want to," I told her quietly. "Ignore it if you need to." She didn't pick up, not the 3rd call or the 4th. By the 5th, she flipped the phone face down and whispered, "I can't talk to him. Not right now." I nodded. "You don't have to." But I knew Ethan. Even in the short time I had seen his true nature, I understood men like him, men who thought persistence was charm and pressure was persuasion. He wouldn't stop until he found a way to reset the narrative in his favor. And right on cue, a car pulled into the driveway. Not slowly, not cautiously, quick, direct, headlights cutting through the living room curtains. Megan stiffened. "Mom." "It's all right," I told her, rising from my chair. "Stay here." I walked to the door, each step measured. The knock came before I even reached the hallway. Fast, impatient, loud enough to echo. I opened the door just enough to see him. Ethan stood on the porch, breathing hard, hair slightly out of place like he'd run his hands through it too many times. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his expression caught between regret and irritation. "Where's Megan?" he demanded. I didn't open the door any wider. "You don't raise your voice at my home." He blinked, thrown off by the calmness. I just need to talk to her. Please, just for a minute." Behind me, Megan stepped into view, keeping a few feet of distance. "I don't want to talk right now," she said, voice trembling but steady. Ethan's eyes darted between us. "You walked out. You didn't answer my calls. What was I supposed to do? Just wait." "Yes," she said. "You were supposed to wait until I was ready." He exhaled sharply. "Megan, this has gotten blown out of proportion. I was trying to help us. Your mom misunderstood." I stepped forward slightly. "Your paperwork spoke clearly enough." He ignored me and focused on Megan. "We're married. We're supposed to plan our life. If we don't talk about finances, then what are we even doing?" "Not this," she whispered. "Not whatever you're doing. I'm doing what any responsible man would do," he shot back. She flinched, and I felt something inside me harden. Not anger, just clarity. "You came into my home," I said, my tone still soft but unshakable, trying to push a plan that belonged to you, not to her, and certainly not to me. He shook his head. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You thought you married into more than you actually did." His jaw clenched, embarrassment flickering across his face. "If you just let me explain," he started. "No," Megan said. "I don't want explanations. I want honesty." He took a step toward her, but I shifted just enough that he had to stop, not blocking him, just reminding him whose threshold he was standing on. "Megan," he said again, quieter now, almost pleading. "I was trying to protect us. My parents always told me to think smart, to secure our future before anything goes wrong." "And what did you think would go wrong?" she asked. "My mom being alive?" His face faltered. The porch light buzzed overhead. A faint breeze rustled through the shrubs along the walkway. Then Megan said something I didn't expect, not because it was harsh, but because it was honest in a way she'd avoided until now. "I don't feel safe with you." Ethan inhaled sharply, like the words had landed physically. "I love you," he said. "I married you." "But you didn't respect me," she replied, "and you didn't respect my mother." Silence. A long, heavy silence. Finally, Ethan looked at me, not with anger, but with something worse. Calculation. A man realizing a door was closing and trying to see if another opening existed behind it. "You're making a mistake," he said. I shook my head slowly. "No, Megan is seeing clearly." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't have a line ready, no strategy, no rehearsed persuasion. He just stood there, staring at the two women who refused to move for him. After a long, tense moment, he stepped back from the porch. "Fine," he said, voice tight. "If this is how you want it, we'll talk later." "You can call tomorrow," Megan said, "not tonight." He hesitated, just long enough to make sure we saw the frustration crack through the surface, then turned and walked down the steps, his shoes hitting the concrete harder than necessary. He got into his car. He didn't look back. He didn't wave. He just drove off into the dark. When the sound of his engine faded, Megan sagged against the doorway, shoulders trembling. I eased the door closed gently, and for the first time since the wedding, the house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for whatever came next. Megan didn't sleep that night. I could hear her footsteps long after the house had gone quiet, soft pacing from the living room to the hallway, then back again. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was thinking, the way people do when the world they built in their mind doesn't match the one they suddenly have to live in. I stayed in my room with the door slightly open, listening, not intruding, just present. Sometimes being a mother at my age means knowing when silence is more comforting than words. Around midnight, the pacing stopped. The house grew still again, and I finally drifted into a light sleep. But just before dawn, something woke me. A muted buzz on the porch, then a soft thud. Not loud, but enough to snap me awake. I slipped from bed, tied my robe, and made my way quietly down the stairs. Through the window beside the front door, I saw it. Another envelope, not tucked gently this time. Dropped. I opened the door slowly, letting the cool morning air brush against my face. The envelope was plain, no name written on it, the edge slightly bent as though it had been handled in a hurry. I didn't pick it up right away. Instead, I closed the door again and locked it, then turned toward the staircase. Megan stood halfway down the steps, her eyes heavy, her hair slightly tangled from a night without rest. "Was someone here?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "but they're gone." She descended the rest of the steps and came to stand beside me. Her gaze settled on the envelope through the glass. "It's him," she whispered. "Maybe," I said gently. "We'll open it together." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Ethan had spread his papers, the same table where he had tried to turn my life into something he felt entitled to manage. Megan placed the envelope in the center, took a deep breath, and slid a finger under the flap. Inside was just one page, typed, clean, sharp. A list of projected values, my projected values, based on assumed inheritance, assumed liquid assets, assumed holdings, numbers exaggerated, numbers inflated, numbers no one should have access to unless they were digging through layers of speculation and old records. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "You're not being honest with Megan. She deserves transparency." No signature, just accusation. Megan's face paled. "Mom, did you write a will? Or did Dad leave something we don't know about?" I met her eyes. Steady, calm. "He left many things," I said softly. "Love, security, wisdom, but what he left behind is my responsibility, not something anyone else gets to demand." She swallowed. "So this list isn't real?" "It's what someone wants you to believe is real," I said, to force a conversation on their terms. She pressed the paper flat on the table, smoothing the corners with shaking hands. "He said you were hiding something, that you weren't being straightforward." I reached over and placed my hand on hers. "I don't owe your husband clarity about things that belong to me." She nodded slowly, but the pain in her eyes didn't fade. "He told me last night, before he came here, that families should share everything, that separate finances fracture trust." "He told you that," I said, "so he could justify wanting access." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clarifying. Megan wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I feel stupid." "You're not," I said. "You're in love, and people in love want to believe the best of who they chose." She breathed out shakily. "I thought he married me, not my future." I didn't correct her. She was arriving at the truth at her own pace, and that mattered more than anything I could say. After a long moment, she stood and walked toward the living room window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek out. The street was quiet. No cars, no movement, just the soft glow of morning settling over the neighborhood. "Mom," she said without turning around, "do you think he'll come back today?" "Yes," I said honestly. "He will," she nodded, "because he still wants something." "Yes." She let the curtain fall and turned to face me. "Then I want to be here when he does." Her voice wasn't angry. It was resolved. We spent the morning in a strange sort of calm. She made tea. I tidied the living room. We sat together without needing to talk. Around 10, she checked her phone again. No calls, no texts. "He's waiting for the right moment," she said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "Men like him always do." At noon, the doorbell rang. Not a knock. A ring. Polite, formal, intentional. Megan and I exchanged a look. "I'll answer," I said. I opened the door expecting Ethan, but it wasn't him. It was a man in a suit holding a briefcase. He gave a tight smile. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Mrs. Hart. I'm with Henderson and Fields Notary Services." My hand tightened on the door. Behind me, Megan froze. He continued, sliding a document from his folder. "I was asked to verify a signature today, something regarding a financial integration agreement." My stomach turned. Ethan hadn't given up. He had escalated. And for the first time since this began, I felt something colder than fear settle into me, a kind of calm steel. I stepped forward, narrowing the space between us. "I didn't request a notary," I said quietly, "and I won't be signing anything." The man blinked. "You're sure? I was told this was urgent." "It isn't," I said, Behind me, Megan spoke, her voice strong, clear, unwavering. "You can tell Ethan this is over." The notary looked uncertain, then nodded slowly, slipping the document back into his case. "Understood." He stepped off the porch without another word. I closed the door gently. Not slammed, not rushed, just closed. Megan leaned against the wall, breath shaky but determined. "He really thought he could push this through," she said. "Yes," I replied. "And now we know just how far he's willing to go." Outside, the notary's car pulled away. Inside, the house felt heavier, but also strangely steadier. Because today, Ethan had shown his hand completely. And tomorrow, I would show mine. Megan stayed close to me the rest of the afternoon, moving quietly through the house as if one loud step might crack the fragile layer of calm we were trying to hold together. She kept checking the window every so often, not because she wanted Ethan to show up, but because she needed to know whether he was out there, whether he was circling the block, whether he was planning his next move. By 3 o'clock, the sky outside had dulled into a soft gray, the kind that settles over everything like a warning. I made us both tea, though neither of us drank much. The steam drifted into the air, then disappeared. "Mom," Megan said softly, "what if he comes back with someone else? A lawyer or his parents?" "Then we handle it," I said, "one moment at a time." She nodded, but her worry didn't fade. It clung to her like humidity, heavy and hard to shake off. Around 4, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Ethan. Just 4 words. "We need to talk." No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of sending a notary to my home, just pressure disguised as necessity. Megan stared at the screen. "Should I respond?" "No," I said gently. "Not until you're ready." She placed the phone face down on the table. "I don't want him showing up again." "He will," I said, "and when he does, we'll be here." The hours crawled by. We sat in the living room together, the television on, but the sound low, more background noise than anything we cared to follow. The house felt tense, not afraid, but bracing. It was almost 6 when I heard a car pull into the driveway again. Not fast, not harsh, slow, controlled. Megan sat up straight. "Mom, I know." The engine shut off, a car door opened, then closed. Footsteps approached the porch, measured, deliberate, the kind someone takes when they've rehearsed what they plan to say. I walked to the door and opened it before he knocked. Ethan stood there alone, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. But this time, there was no faux charm, no polite smile. Just a man who'd run out of smooth edges and now clung to whatever scraps of confidence he had left. "Megan," he said, looking past me, "please." She stepped into view behind me, arms crossed, expression guarded but not broken. "You sent a notary to my mother's house," she said. He exhaled sharply. "I was trying to fix things." "No," she said. "You were trying to force them." Ethan dragged a hand over his face. "Can I just come in? We can't have this conversation on the porch." I didn't move aside. "You can say what you need to say from there." His jaw tightened again. "Fine." He looked at Megan, not me. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. I just wanted to make sure we were aligned." "That's not an apology," she said quietly. "That's a justification." He shifted, frustrated. "I'm doing what any responsible man would do. Your mom's finances affect our future. I can't build a life with someone who hides things." "She isn't hiding anything from me," Megan said. "She's hiding from me," he countered. "She doesn't owe you anything," Megan replied. Ethan's expression hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. Less panic now, more resentment. "She owes us the truth," he said. I stepped forward, just enough to break the line of his argument. "The truth," I said calmly, "is that my finances were never meant to be part of your marriage. And the more you push, the farther you push yourself from the place you think you deserve." He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm going to say something once," I continued, "and you're going to listen." The porch, the air, even the street seemed to quiet. "I've seen men like you before, so polished, so eager, so sure they can wrap their ambitions in concern and call it responsibility. You didn't come into this marriage wanting to know my daughter. You came into it wanting to know my ledger." His eyes flickered, a hit he didn't expect. "You looked into my accounts, my properties. You sent documents, you brought a notary, you involved your parents, all within days of the wedding." I shook my head slowly. "That isn't responsibility. That isn't planning. That is opportunistic." He swallowed. Megan held her breath. And the worst part, I added softly, is that you thought you could do it before she realized who you really were. Ethan straightened. You don't know me. But I recognize you, I said. His composure slipped then, anger, shame, desperation all tangled together. Megan, he said again, I love you. I married you. That means something. It means nothing if you don't respect me, she replied. He stepped closer, but I moved an inch forward, a silent reminder of the boundary he wouldn't cross in my home again. Go home, Ethan, I said. Take time to think about what you want. Really think. He stared at me for a long moment, then at Megan. I'm not giving up, he said finally. No, she whispered, but you already lost something today. His breath caught, and for a second I thought he might argue again. But he didn't. He turned, walked down the steps, got into his car, sat there for a moment with his hands gripping the wheel, then drove away with no more pretense. Megan closed the door softly. She leaned against it and let out a long, trembling breath. What now? She asked. Now, I said, we decide what part of the truth you're ready to know. Her eyes lifted to mine, scared, curious, hurt, hopeful, and I realized the moment had finally come, the moment my husband had prepared me for, the moment the hidden inheritance stopped being just my burden to carry. Sit down, I told her gently. There are things I haven't told you. We sat together in the quiet of the living room, the late evening light settling across the carpet in long, soft stripes. Megan folded her hands in her lap, her shoulders tight, her eyes fixed on mine with a mixture of fear and readiness. I could see it in her, the moment a daughter becomes an adult in a way she never wanted to. Not through age, through truth. I took a breath, slow and steady. When your father passed, I began, he left me more than memories. He left me instructions. He knew how people could change when money entered a conversation. He knew how charm could twist itself into entitlement. And he knew, more than anyone, that protecting you meant protecting what he left behind. Megan's brow furrowed. Mom, what did he leave? I reached for the small wooden box on the side table, the one my husband had carved by hand years ago. I set it gently between us and opened the lid. Inside was a sealed envelope with my husband's handwriting across the front, familiar and steady. For Megan, when she is ready. Her breath caught. He left this for you, I said, but he told me to wait, not because he didn't trust you. He trusted you more than anyone, but because he didn't trust the world around you. He wanted you to be surrounded by people who cared for you, not people who cared for what you could give them. Her fingers brushed the edge of the envelope, hesitant, almost afraid. Is this the inheritance? It's the truth about it, I said softly. The full truth. She didn't open it yet. She just held it in both hands, as gently as if it were alive. Mom, she whispered, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you were building a life, I answered, and I wanted you to fall in love without anyone whispering numbers in your ear. I didn't want the shadow of a fortune shaping your choices. I wanted you to choose a partner with your heart, not with your fear or obligation. She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheek. And did I? She asked in a trembling voice. I reached over and wiped her tears with my thumb. You chose with your heart, and when you realized your heart wasn't safe, you listened. That's more than most people do. She looked down at the envelope again, then placed it gently back into the box. I don't want to open it yet, she said. Not tonight. Tonight I just want us. I closed the lid, feeling a quiet peace settle over me. Then we wait, together. We sat there in silence, the kind that wraps around two people who've seen something hard and made it through the other side. The house felt different, not lighter, but steadier, like something had shifted back into place. Then Megan asked the question I knew was coming. What happens with Ethan? The name didn't sting anymore. It just existed, like the closing of a chapter. That, I said gently, is your choice. But understand this. Love is not supposed to ask for access to what it didn't build, and it's not supposed to pressure you into giving things you don't owe. She nodded, her face softening as she finally understood something she wasn't ready to see before. I think, she said quietly, that I need time and space and honesty from both of us. You'll have it, I promised. She leaned against me then, resting her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was little. And for a moment, it felt like the years folded in on themselves. The scraped knees, the late-night fevers, the whispered fears before big tests and big decisions. Mom? she murmured. Yes. Thank you for protecting me, even when I didn't know I needed it. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of her words settle into the empty spaces grief had carved out over the years. That's what mothers do, I said softly, even when no one sees it. Outside, the neighborhood fell into a quiet evening hush. Inside, the lamp cast a warm glow around us, lighting the room in a way that felt safe and familiar. After a long while, Megan stood and walked to the window. She pulled the curtain back just enough to peek outside. The driveway was empty, the street still, no headlights, no shadows. He's not coming back tonight, she said. No, I agreed. Tonight, he's thinking. She turned to me with a surprised look. About what? About the difference, I said, between a marriage built on love and one built on opportunity. Her shoulders eased, and she gave a small, tired smile. I dimmed the light, and together we settled into the living room, the quiet wrapping around us like a blanket. It wasn't the ending either of us imagined for the week, but it was the ending we needed. A clean breath after a storm, a closing of a door that was never meant to stay open. And as Megan drifted to sleep on the couch, I looked at the wooden box on the table and whispered to the man whose handwriting filled the letter inside. I kept our promise. The house felt warm again, safe again. And for the first time since the wedding, I allowed myself to rest, because the danger had passed, because the truth had been spoken, because my daughter finally saw clearly, and because, in the quiet glow of that room, the future felt ours again, not his.